One thing to clear up before last week, that video from last week was called The Bible Project Joshua. So if you tack around another video this week from the same company, the Bible Project has a lot of different videos on that. This is a very important topic today for many reasons. What are some of the reasons the Old Testament law is an important topic? Anybody? Pardon? Foundation. Okay, what else?
Not much. Somebody just tripped.
Yes. Studying the Old Testament law is very important nowadays because it causes a lot of issues in modern Christianity. Why is it important to study this? Go ahead.
It helps you to understand more information in the Bible, and you can understand why they live the way they did and how they honor God.
Okay, good. Two things you have, those who've been around a while, you realize that atheists and legalists, this is their happy hunting ground. If you are an atheist or you are a legalist, the Old Testament is where they camp. So we're going to try and explain how that fits with the New Testament today. So we want to answer a couple of questions here. And it's on your worksheet. What was the law's purpose?
To show that we couldn't keep it.
Okay, wait, class dismissed. Let's go now. And where does it fit in our Christian lives today? These are two very important questions that we need to answer. And you are going to get confronted with this quite a bit if you're out and about and you start discussing your faith. So just want you to be aware of this.
You can't know that you're sinning unless you know what law is.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, how many of you took the time to look at Leviticus this week? Wasn't that a fun read? And I just wanted you to do that so you could be exposed to all the various topics and subjects in there. Mary Ann showed me, she did an outline of that, and I did a smaller outline than she did. But if you read that book, does anyone know how many laws the Jews claim to have in the Pentateuch?
613.
Okay, good.
You think they'd be starving to death to make sacrifices?
So just to go over some of those 600 laws, the name, there was burnt offerings. Now we're not going to discuss what all these are. We don't have time. We're going to come back and pick some of these up next time when we get into the temple and ceremonies. There's the burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering. You get a theme here? These people really messed up a lot, didn't they? The trespass offering, the laws concerning Aaron and his sons, then conduct prescribed for priests, food permitted and food prohibited, what to do after childbirth, a lot of laws on that, leprosy laws, ritual laws for cleaning leprosy if you have leprosy, laws concerning bodily discharges, all sorts of bodily discharges, blood laws, Leviticus 18, sexual morality, what offerings are accepted and not accepted, various feasts to hold, tabernacle information, lending, and slavery laws. So there are dozens of where do all these fit with the New Testament? So
You're most likely familiar with the 10 Commandments in the Bible. Stuff we generally take as good advice. Don't murder, don't steal, honor your parents, the list goes on.
And those are just the first 10. There are actually a total of 613 commands, all given to ancient Israel, found in the first 5 books of the Bible, which in Hebrew are called the Torah.
Now the word Torah is usually translated in English as the law, because it has all of these laws in it. And as you read through them, you wonder, am I supposed to obey some of these, all of these? What's the purpose of the law?
Well, that translation is kind of confusing, because while the Torah has laws in it, the book itself is fundamentally a story about how God is creating new kinds of people who are fully able to love God and love others. And when Jesus taught about the Torah, he said that he was bringing that story to its fulfillment.
So walk me through the story and how it's fulfilled.
So the story begins with God creating humanity who rebels. And God chooses Abraham to bless all of the nations through his family, who end up in slavery down in Egypt, and so God rescues them. Then at Mount Sinai, God makes a covenant with Israel, like an agreement. And all of the laws that Moses gives to Israel are the terms of that agreement. They're like a constitution. And so some of the laws that are about rituals and customs that set Israel apart from the nations. Other laws are about social justice or morality. And by following these, Israel would show the other nations what God is like.
Okay, so the rest of the Torah is just a complete list of laws that Moses gives Israel?
No, the rest of the Torah just continues the story. And the 613 commands are only a selection from that original constitution. And even these have been broken up and placed at strategic points within the story. Now pay attention, because you'll see a really clear pattern. Moses gives the first laws to Israel.
And don't worship other gods, don't make idols.
And then right after that, there's a story of Israel breaking those very laws.
And they worship the golden calf.
And so Moses gives some more laws. And then you get more stories of rebellion. Some more laws, rebellion again, some more laws, more rebellion, and you start to see the point.
Right, no matter how many laws, they're just going to continue to rebel.
So at the conclusion of the Torah's story, Moses gives this final speech to Israel as they prepare to go into their new home. And he tells them, you guys, I know that you're not going to follow all of God's laws. You've proven to me that you're incapable. And Moses says the problem is that their hearts are hard and that they're going to need new, transformed hearts if they're ever going to truly follow God's law. And he was right. I mean, the story goes on to recount Israel's total failure.
They go into the land, they break all the laws.
Right. Now, the next section of books in the Jewish tradition are the 15 books of the prophets, and they reflect back on the story. For example, Ezekiel, he said that if Israel was ever going to obey the law, God's Spirit would have to transform their hard hearts into soft hearts. And Jeremiah said that's when obedience to God's command wouldn't feel like a duty, but they would be written deep in their hearts. And Isaiah, he promised a future leader, Israel's Messiah, who will lead all of the people in obedience to the law. Now, in Jewish tradition, all of these books together are called the prophets, even the historical books, because they're continuing the story told from the perspective of the prophets.
Okay, so we have the law and the prophets, and they're telling one connected story about God's desire to bless the whole world through a people, Israel, who it turns out needs a new heart.
Yes, and Jesus saw himself as continuing that story. So he agreed with the law and the prophets when he taught that it's out of the human heart that come the most ugly parts of human nature. It's like the default setting of our hearts as opposed to God's law. But Jesus also said that he came to solve that problem, and in his words, to fulfill the law.
So what does he mean there, to fulfill the law?
Well, first he said that the demand of all of the laws in the Torah could be fulfilled by what he called the Great Command, that we are to love God and to love others.
So that seems pretty easy. I mean, we all want to love.
Well, we think we want to love. But Jesus showed how love is far more demanding than we realize. So he quotes the law, do not murder. And he says, yes, not killing someone is a very loving thing to do. But then he also says that when you treat someone with disrespect, or when you nurse resentment against them, you're also violating God's moral ideal, because you're not treating that person with love. And so Jesus said true love ought to extend even to our own enemies. So even though this command seems very simple, Jesus shows how our hearts are not currently equipped to fulfill even this basic command of God to love others.
And that's kind of a demo.
But where Israel failed, Jesus brought the story to its fulfillment. As Israel's Messiah, he fully loved God and others, and he showed all of the nations what God is truly like. He did this through his acts of compassion and mercy, and ultimately by loving his enemies even unto death. And after his resurrection, he told his followers that he would send God's Spirit to transform their hearts so that they could follow him and fulfill the purpose of the law, to love God and to love their neighbor. So this fulfills the story of the law and the prophets, or in the words of the Apostle Paul, the one who loves fulfills the law.
Does that help any? What did that say? The purpose of the law was to get us to love God, love others, and as Mark pointed out, and I love the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus was doubling down there. There were a few Jews that thought they could keep the law. You know, some of them said, I've kept all 10 commandments. So what did Jesus do in the Sermon on the Mount? It shows you here. He said, let me explain to you what it means do not murder. And what did he say? You are murdering, in fact, murdering them, right? You violated that commandment. So again, the whole point was, as Mark pointed out back in the beginning, the purpose of the law was to point out that we are sinners and we cannot keep the law ourselves. We have a hard heart. Unless we get a new heart, no matter how hard we try, it will not work. So good. So a couple of things here we want to cover. Number one, all scriptures bear witness to Christ, including the Old Testament. Where do we find that? Turn to John 5:39. John 5 speaking. John 5:39. You search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me. And then we jump up to 46 and 47. For if you believe Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So what is Jesus saying here? I realize this is large class and your steers speaking out, but what did Jesus just say here?
You've already been told about me, and you didn't believe me then. You didn't believe things about me. Why? What's different?
Okay.
Why are you going to believe me now as opposed to earlier when?
And Jesus confirmed that Moses was writing about who? Him. He said that. I mean, some people say, well, where does it say that everything in the Old Testament's about Jesus? Well, here he's saying it. Okay, good. So number one, all scriptures bear witness to Christ, including the Old Testament, in some way or another. Number two, then, all scriptures are about Jesus. Even when not a specific prediction about him, there is a fullness of implication in all the scripture that points to Christ and him only. Turn to Luke 24. Back a little bit. Story of the road to Emmaus. Luke 24, verse 27. You remember the story, the road to Emmaus? What's going on there? Can someone sum that up for me?
Two disciples are on the way. They're in the walking, having a discussion with Jesus, but he don't even recognize him. He comes up with him.
Okay, good. And I love verse 27. Luke 24:27. And this is Jesus speaking. And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded everything in one way or the other. Would you have liked to have been there for that? I wonder how long that took. I wonder if that was, let's see. Yeah. I don't know when he started doing that. But he did that while they were walking. So, what